Welcome to the Sommelier Series. Welcome back to Nederburg, one of my very favourite parts of Nederburg. It's a part of Nederburg that I've been trying to get myself locked into for ages. It's the cellar, and I'm surrounded by over 4,000 barrels of some of South Africa's finest wine. So this is where all of the wine sits, gently maturing, preparing to eventually be bottled and sent off to some of the best restaurants around the world. And it's one of those best restaurants, which is where we're headed for this week's episode. David Higgs is celebrated as one of South Africa's finest chefs. He's a former Chef of the Year and until a few years ago was running the kitchen at the Saxon. But he then broke out with his very first restaurant in Johannesburg, Marble, and it's been a smash hit with diners across the country. But as with any fine restaurant, it's not just about the food, it's a very stylish place. And then there's Marble's wine list. The architect of that wine list is a young sommelier who's won many awards. His name is Wikus Human. He has an incredible nose, an extraordinary passion for wine, and a real love for what he does. So if I can tear myself away from the cellar here at Nederburg, let's head up to Marble and meet Wikus. Some of my best food memories in South Africa have taken place in this very restaurant. It's become the signature restaurant, I suppose, of Johannesburg. It's booked weeks in advance. It's always full of incredibly happy people. It is Marble, and it is the restaurant that saw change in David Higgs, the former South African Chef of the Year, who had been over at the Saxon and making very intricate, very fine dining, very gourmand style food. He's still making fantastic food, but it's a more accessible menu, and it's in a space that's just absolutely beautiful. But no matter how good the food is, no matter how wonderful the design is, no matter how great the atmosphere is, all of that sits a very distant second to the quality of the wine, because Marble has got one of my favourite cellars and favourite wine lists in all of South Africa. And all that comes down to a man who's got an almost M. Night Shyamalan feel about wine. He can look at a label and tell you whether the winemaker was left or right-handed. An exceptional nose, a great love of wine. Wikus, thank you for having us. Lovely to be in but I suppose you call home now.
Yeah, I think I go home and maybe sleep a bit there, but most of the time I spend here.
It's a fantastic space in between here and Saint. The other restaurant that you oversee is the head sommelier. You've got a wonderful wine story here, but your own wine story goes back a lot further. How did Wikus first discover wine, fall in love with wine, and start the journey to where you are now?
Okay, I studied BCom tourism at the University of Tuks in Pretoria and started my first job at Forum Harmony. Worked the front desk there for a while and realized it's not really what I wanted to do. Arjun and Maria introduced me the one day to a wine tasting. They were preparing for a wine dinner, and I sat around the table and Kate Meissner was around the table and Arjun was sitting there, and they were tasting through wines and talking about all these flavors, and I think that's just where it basically came on, where I needed to know more about wine. So I asked Wikus Human, the GM, who's the best wine fundi at the moment in South Africa, and old Francis Kroener's name came up. So I had a meeting with Francis Kroener, and he basically said, this is the way forward, you have to do your W set or go through quartermasters, and that's what basically all kicked off. Started with my WSET level 3, passed that, and went to London to go see Gareth and Stefan, and the two South African chaps working there at the moment, and they basically said quartermasters is the way to go forward. So eventually sat and did my introductory, passed my certified as well, and now aiming for advanced. But that's all where it kicked off.
Was there a history of wine in the family? Did your parents drink wine?
Not at all. Parents just drink plain old Sauvignon Blanc.
So what was it then about wine in particular? What clicked? What sparked the passion?
I just think I'm more of a specialist when it comes to things. When I really take on something, I like to go in deeper, to go read more about it. And wine has got endless possibilities of different winemaking styles, different flavors behind it. I mean, the whole world makes wine essentially. There's some areas in the world we didn't even know they make wine. And I think this just basically keeps me intrigued, and it's basically an ongoing thing. You can never get bored with wine. Every year there's a new wine that comes out, someone makes something new, someone tries something different. It's an industry which keeps you going every single day.
It's an industry that you've worked your way through. You started at Forum Harmony. What was the wine trip from there to now find yourself as David Higgs' right-hand man?
I think there it was quite fun because it was more fine dining, so it was quite intricate food and wine pairings, and you had to read up a lot about your wines and make sure your food and wine pairings matched up quite well. When I started at Marble, everything changed. It went from an 80-seater to a 300-seater essentially at night. And it makes it very difficult. There's not only a set menu here, but there's a la carte menu here. So people order different starters, different mains, and all of a sudden you as a sommelier walk up to the table and get asked to pair wine with 4 different dishes. It makes it quite hard, but you have to know your wines quite well. The other thing is also, as a set menu, you can study your wines beforehand. Here on the floor, you have to know every single wine on the wine list. Who's the winemaker, how the wine is made, what varietals are in there. Anyone can ask you a question about any wine on the wine list, whether it's local or international, and you should be able to answer. So it was quite a big step and quite a big difference, but I must say it's made me quite a strong sommelier.
What about the challenge of working with David as a chef? Here's a guy who's so celebrated, he's won all these awards, he's creating food that around the world people travel for. You've now got to make sure that the wine lives up to those standards.
Yeah, I think it's quite a difficult thing to, not say work with David, but just basically he makes food which is incredible, and sometimes there's 1 or 2 flavors which I don't agree with David with, but we always come to a mean and we'll taste something together. David also has a very good wine palate, so I sometimes ask him for some insight on, do you think this would work, this thing by the glass, think the South African market would accept it, or what the response would be to the wine. So we work very well together, and we haven't cooked together yet, but I'm sure that will come shortly.
What's been your biggest challenge in the restaurant as a dish, trying to find a wine to pair with it?
I think once you get at a table and there's a salmon, a lionfish, a Jersey steak on there, and then probably a piece of fillet, it's the most difficult thing to pair with. You got so much fat from the Jersey, you got a lionfish on the table, it really makes it super hard. But there's ways to cut around it, and something like champagne or MCC works great with everything like that, and you really open up the world to the consumers that eat here, that you can have MCC with a main course. It's not only to have MCC with starters or as aperitif, so yeah.
The restaurant is full most nights, and quite often full of rather well-known people. In as much as you're allowed to say, who's the coolest big-name guest you've been able to serve here?
Probably the coolest guy I've ever served is David Beckham. He's been here numerous times, and every time when he walks in, it's quite cool to, when he walks up to you, he stops basically walking to the restaurant, walks up to the sommelier and says, hey, how you doing? What shall we drink today? It's quite a cool feeling when someone like that walks up to you and asks you for a recommendation. It really actually just shakes your hand. Yeah.
You've won all manner of international sommelier awards, so effectively you could say that David Beckham is the Wikus Human of football.
That could be true, yeah.
Talk to us about some of those accolades that you've won.
So in 2017, which I think was my big starting point in South African basically sommeliers, was to win the Moet en Chandon Best Young Sommelier 2017. And after that came second place in Gaggenau with Joachim Blackadder. 2 years ago was Best Sommelier South Africa. Bit of a hard, tough year for me. Didn't do so well there, but this year is again the Best Sommelier South Africa competition. And main point is just to hopefully place top 3 or perhaps hopefully on the pole position and take Marble's restaurant to the best sommelier competition in the world, essentially.
There's almost a wizardry to it when you see a sommelier pick up the glass. You can see the brain working. You're picking up the nose, the palate. When you pick up a wine, out of 10, how many times can you get exactly what that grape is?
Gee, it all depends on the day, but I would say I'll probably get an 8 out of 10 if I'm on a good day. I mean, blind tasting is one of the hardest things that you can do as a sommelier. You never know what's in the glass. You never know if it's a traditional varietal, if it's a Sauvignon Blanc from South Africa. So many different wine styles, so many different winemaking techniques where it's so difficult to pinpoint a varietal exactly on the day.
You've drunk a lot of wine, tasted a lot of wine over the years. Is there one particular wine, one particular bottle, maybe for the occasion, maybe for whoever made it, that you remember as being something that just will always stand out for you?
Probably the bottle that stood out for me was one of my oldest Burgundies, my oldest Bordeaux. Opened here at Marble, and it was a 1955 Lafite. I was very scared to open the bottle, but once I managed to get the cork out successfully with my 2-prong, the first taste I had of a 1955 Lafite was absolutely something to remember as a sommelier. You don't think that a wine could age that well. It was absolutely exceptional.
And you do sell a bit of French wine here, and I've had a look at some of the prices. It's not that cheap.
Yeah, there's quite a few big hitters on the list. John Le Chave Hermitage is one of our big ones, Romani Conti, the Grand Cesarzo and Esterzo, and some very good sort of Grand Cru and Premier Cru Burgundies that we have on the list from Rousseau. I mean, there's some guys like Jean Griveaux that's on there as well, so some very good stuff. And I mean, it actually quite moves pretty well. So,
What's the single most expensive bottle of wine I can buy at Marble?
that would be the Romani Conti 1989, and that goes for about 250.
250,000 rand.
That's correct, yeah.
Cheap at twice the price.
Quite a good price compared to Wine Searcher. So,
Now, you're a sommelier, you focus on wine, and you've developed in a very short space of time an extraordinary reputation. And yet, I am led to believe that when the hair is let down and Wikus is out on a quiet night, that the wine might be set aside from time to time. A little Captain Morgan might enter the dice.
that is true. There's nothing like a captain's game, but yeah.
Do you ever get sick of wine? Do you need that balance?
Well, usually on a brile, I'll usually start off with 2 beers and move over to wine. But I don't really get sick of wine. If I'm out on the jewel, it's probably something like tequila and dry lemon, but yeah.
You serve a huge amount of wine here. You've got a fantastic cellar, great list. How difficult is it? What's the biggest challenge with maintaining that list, deciding what to add, what to take away, with keeping a sense of balance to it all?
Look, I think we always want to stay quite current, and we taste together as a team essentially. Myself, Frans and Temba really taste quite a bit together, and we see if it works or not. So recently we just added an orange wine by the glass, just to see what the acceptance would be, or what the South African market thinks about orange wine. And it's worked quite well fairly. The nice thing about the wine is we can print on a daily basis. So if we take on 6 bottles and 6 bottles doesn't move as quickly, we try and just push it out, and then we add something else on the list. So it's currently changing. It keeps our jobs entertaining as well. We find new things every day. So yeah, it's not really a challenge. It's actually quite fun. And once in a while you hit the odd one where you think, gee, the market doesn't like this at all. It was a bit of a dud. Yeah.
People who come in, drink wine, what's the most annoying thing for you as a sommelier that customers will do?
I think when you get to the table and you introduce yourself as a sommelier, many people sort of look at you and think, who are you? Are you here to rob my pocket? Essentially, it's not what we're really here to do. We're really trying to help you and find a good bottle of wine for the table, whether it's a wine of 300 Rand, whether it's a wine of 15,000 Rand. We're really not here to burn your pocket. And I mean, people that sort of lift their glasses when you pour champagne, people asking for ice, I've accepted now, that's the Joburg market. But yeah, it's probably people not willing to listen to what the sommelier has to say.
Well, I'm going to listen to exactly what you have to say, because we're going to let Wikus head off to his cellar. He's getting a bottle of wine. He's also told David Higgs to make a dish to go with that wine. I don't know what the wine is, I don't know what the food is, but I can't wait to find out. All right, so Wikus has returned from his cellar with a big smile on his face. What are we drinking? What are we eating?
So we're going to start off with a bit of bubbles here. Sort of a producer that's really coming up in South Africa now. It's actually been around for quite a while, but one of my good mates, Paul Gerber, has actually started at Colmont. So it's basically Paul and John Philippe Colmont. They've been mates for 10 years, and Paul decided in the last year to leave Lelude and collaborate with JP essentially. And I mean, they're trying to focus to really make sort of grower champagne or grower MCC in South Africa. They're really focusing on different terroirs, trying to use the premium cuvée press and that kind of things. So it's really, really good MCC at the moment in South Africa. So it's just a brut. The dosage is sitting at about 6.8 grams of residual sugar, so it's quite dry. And it's a blend of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, 52 Pinot Noir and 48% of Chardonnay. Their main focus is also trying to focus on Chardonnay going forward. So they're really looking at different pockets in Sondagskloof, Bonnievale, really trying to focus on these Chardonnay pockets and essentially make a premium cuvée of Chardonnay in South Africa.
Which is it's a space on the up and up, really. The quality we're making is superb.
Definitely. I think there's nothing different between MCC and Champagne except for the name. It's all made in basically Champagne style.
The key difference is that the French aren't allowed to call it MCC because it isn't as good as ours.
Exactly, 100%. 100%. So I've also chosen, there's also a big dispute on whether to use flutes or white wine glasses. I've chosen the Zalto Riesling glass for this afternoon. This wine just takes on bubbly well. It sips amazingly. There's still enough space for the bubbles to travel upwards to release those beautiful nuances of the MCC. So there we go.
Aha.
Excellent. And a quick chat with Paul. I mean, as we said, dominantly Pinot Noir, about 52%. This releases kind of this beautiful kind of red berry flavors coming off with some cherries, some raspberries. And then the other half is the Chardonnay, which brings this beautiful kind of citrus flavors to the wine. So you pick up quite a bit of citrus, lime. The Pinot Noir also provides a beautiful bubbly a beautiful structure in the bubbly, which makes it quite well for something like oysters, which we're going to have this afternoon. The oysters that we have here is our marble oysters. It's basically been on the menu since day one, and this is probably my recommendation as a starter. We do fantastic meats on the fire, beautiful seafood on the fire as well, but oysters just match up so beautifully with champagne.
Right, well, you've got me very excited.
It's just so refreshing. I mean, the wine definitely has a beautiful elegance to it. It's got good length to it. It's not super rich. The time on the lease here is 24 months, and it is another 6 to 8 months on cork before they release it. So,
Oh. And I love that nose. I mean, not often you think about the strawberry, about the red fruits when you're talking about champagne or Cap Classique.
yeah.
But that Pinot Noir will obviously give it that, and especially on the nose, comes through delightfully. All right, well, this is certainly a winner. Now to see how it matches up with Mr. Higgs's oysters. So this time yesterday, these were happily sitting somewhere in Namibia.
Yes, that's true. We're trying to get them in fresh. I mean, I don't think frozen oysters are as good as fresh oysters, but these are absolutely to die for. Sometimes I have them for staff lunch.
And just as your Cap Classique takes you through a couple of different stages on the palate, you get that lovely opening citrus burst, and then right at the end you feel the ocean coming back in.
Yeah. A slight bit of saltiness, like
Yeah.
more saline character coming in. There's also a bit of Thai water dressing on the oysters, which is basically made with fish sauce as well. There's a bit of cayenne pepper in there as well, which adds a little bit of spice. It's not super burny, but you can get that little bit of spiciness, and I think that the MCC just breaks that spiciness so quite well in the oysters.
Individually, both superb. As a combination, I suppose to use some of your parlance, right up there with Captain Morgan and Coke. Beautiful combination, and exactly what I'd expect from an acclaimed sommelier and a terrific restaurant. Thank you for a wonderful way to start the week with some oysters and some bubbles, and I look forward to many more fine meals and great bottles of wine here at Marble.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.